Hey guys, this is Anthony Morganti from AnthonyMorganti.com. This is episode 9 of the video series Getting Started in Photoshop. In this episode, we're going to be doing a simple portrait retouch. Now, what I'm going to be showing you will work out great if you're a portrait, wedding, or lifestyle photographer. On the other hand, if you're a fashion or advertising photographer, you're probably going to need some advanced Photoshop techniques to process those types of images. But what I'm going to be showing you today will work out for most of us who are wedding, lifestyle, or portrait photographers, and this should be all you'll need. Now what we're going to be doing is a number of different things. We're going to whiten her teeth, we're going to brighten her eyes, we're going to get rid of some stray hairs, remove some blemishes, and soften her skin. Now on the whole, it doesn't really matter what order you do these in. You could do them in any order you feel comfortable with, but I do recommend that you remove blemishes before you soften skin. Now, today, I'm going to do them in the order that I think is easiest to the hardest. And I think the easiest thing to do is to whiten her teeth. Now, to do that, what we're going to do is duplicate this background layer first. And because I have a Mac, I just hit Command-J, and I have a duplicate layer. If you have a PC, you'd hit Control-J. Now, for these adjustments, as it is in Photoshop, there's probably hundreds, if not thousands, of different ways to achieve the same exact thing. The way I'm going to show you is the way I do it every single day and the way that works for me. But I encourage you to look at how other photographers achieve, let's say, teeth whitening or eye brightening, and see what works best for you. Now, to whiten her skin, I like to use whiten her teeth, I like to use adjustment layers. That way I could go back in and readjust it if I find I need to. Now, to whiten her teeth, what we're going to do is we're going to get this adjustment layer right here, hue and saturation. And when we add this adjustment layer, you'll see it comes with a layer mask. Now the initial adjustments we'll be doing will adjust the entire image, not just her teeth. But we're going to use the mask so that only her teeth get affected. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to this drop down right here where it says master. And we're going to change that to yellows because there's a little yellow in her teeth. And we're going to take saturation all the way down. And again, it's affecting the entire image. Don't worry about that. And we're going to bring lightness up. So we're making her teeth a lot brighter. And again, the reason why I like to use these adjustment layers is I could go back in and readjust this if I have to. Now, again, it affected the entire image. I don't want it to. So I'm going to paint in black where I don't want it to be. Well, it's probably a lot easier if I had a black mask to begin with, and I painted in white where I wanted it to be. So I'm going to invert this white mask. And it's very easy to do. Just hit Command-I on your keyboard if you have a Mac, Control-I if you have a PC, and now we have a black mask. So make sure you're clicked on this mask. We're going to get a brush. Hit the B key on your keyboard. The brush is right here. We're going to go up here to the tool properties. And we want hardness probably around 30% is good. We're going to zoom in a little bit by hitting Command plus. It's Control plus if you have a PC. And we're going to paint in white. Now look at our swatches here. Make sure you have black and white. If you don't, hit the D key on your keyboard. It will give you the default colors of black and white. Make sure white is in the foreground. If it isn't, hit the X key on your keyboard so you have white in the foreground. Get a brush that's big enough. You could hit the right bracket key to make that brush bigger. Left bracket key makes it smaller. I'm using a Wacom tablet. I use the control wheel to spin in a larger or smaller brush. Now, because we're just painting on a mask, don't worry if you slip and let's say go over her lip or over her gums or anything, because we could just then paint in black to bring that back the way it should be. And I'll show you exactly what I mean in a minute. So we're going to paint away any yellow on her teeth. Now if I did slip and went across her gum or on her lip and I didn't want to, we just switch our swatch so black is in the foreground by hitting the X key. And then in this case, I would get a larger brush and I could just paint in black over those mistakes, those areas where I went too far. So I just want the effect to work on her teeth. So I'm going to turn it off. There's before, there's after. Now you can see she had really white teeth to begin with, so there was really no big issue here. So I'm going to zoom back out by hitting Command-0. That fits it to screen. If you have a PC, it's Control-0. And there again is before and after. Now, when I used to work with Photoshop, I used to do all my adjustments and leave all my layers intact. So by the end of the portrait, I probably had 20 or 30 layers maybe over here. And I like doing it that way because then I could go back in. Let's say I'm almost done with this processing, and then I look back and I say, wow, her teeth are a little too white or they're not white enough. I could go back in and readjust. But lately what I've been doing is I've been flattening it as I go. It saves a lot of time because you're not tempted to go back. And plus, I guess I'm a little more sure of myself than I used to be. So I'm sure the teeth are whitened properly, and I'll flatten the image. That saves on disk space as well. So if you ultimately save this project, this photo, the less layers you have, the smaller the file will be, the faster it will save, the faster it will load, things like that. Now, for the sake of this demonstration, I want to keep my background layer intact because that's going to be our before image. So I'm going to show you before and afters. So I'm just going to what they call merge down. That means whatever layer you have highlighted will get merged to the layer directly below it. And to do that, super easy. Just hit Command E or Control E, and we merge down. So there is our before and after. So we have some white teeth. All right, next, we are going to brighten our eyes. I think that's fairly easy, and it's a similar type adjustment. But, whoops, I had the brush there, and I painted there because I slipped. Okay. What we're going to do is instead of getting the hue saturation adjustment layer, we're just going to get a brightness contrast adjustment layer. Now you could do the same adjustment with levels, with curves, or with exposure, but I'm just going to get a brightness adjustment layer right there. And I'm just going to take brightness up. Now when I do, you're going to see it's going to brighten the entire image. But again, we have that layer mask. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit so I can get a better look at her iris. That's mainly what we're brightening is her iris. And if I bring it up too far or not far enough, because we have that adjustment layer, I could go back in and readjust this. So I'd say that's good. Now I want to turn this layer mask black, so I'm going to hit Command I to invert it. Again, if you have a PC, it's Control I. We're going to get a brush. We have the brush already. We want our hardness probably a little bit harder, maybe closer to 18-20% in there somewhere. And we're going to be painting in white because we have that black mask. And we want a brush that is just big enough to fit inside of her iris of her eye. And again, don't worry if you slip and go too far outside of her iris because we then could just paint in black and fix it. So don't worry. Now, typically try to get as close to the edge as possible. I'm going to get a smaller brush and kind of go across the top here a little bit. Not that it's going to make much difference there. Okay, now I'm going to zoom back out just to see what it looks like by hitting Command 0. Again, it's Control 0 if you have a PC. I think her eyes are a little too bright, so I'm going to just open up by clicking right there, open up the brightness contrast adjustment, go back to our brightness slider, and bring it down a touch. I think there's before, there's after. So it's a significant adjustment. I think that's good enough. So I'm done with that. I'm going to merge down again by hitting Command E. It's Control E again if you have a PC. And I think the next thing that we'll do, now we whitened her teeth and we brightened her eyes, I think we'll remove some blemishes. Now there's, again, a number of different ways you could do this. I prefer to use the spot healing brush. Some photographers prefer to use the healing brush. The difference being is with the spot healing brush, I could simply click on a blemish and hopefully it'll be gone. With the healing brush tool, you have to sample a spot or an area and then click on the blemish. So you would sample by holding in the Alt or Option key. It's Alt if you have a PC, Option if you have a Mac, and take a sample of an area near the blemish, like right there. Then you would take and just click, and you can see that little plus sign or bullseye sign right there. That little plus sign, that's where the sample is coming from. A lot of people prefer to do that, and they keep sampling near a blemish and remove a blemish, and it works great. The advantage of doing it that way is with the regular spot healing brush that I use, if I come over here near, let's say, her hair, it often would smudge. So then I'd have to use the regular healing brush to fix that area. For me, I prefer again to use the spot healing brush, quickly go through and remove as many blemishes as it does. If anything is smearing, then I'll go to the regular healing brush and remove any blemishes with that. So I'm just going to go very quickly for the sake of this video. So I'm just going to click. Now, you could make a decision here. She has like 2 moles, it looks like. Maybe 3, but we'll say that's a blemish. Moles are kind of forever, and it's kind of who the person is. And you may not want to remove moles. Typically, I leave moles unless I get requested by my client to remove the mole or soften the mole in some way. So I leave moles. It's really up to you, but in this case, I'm going to leave them. Now, we're also going to get rid of some stray hairs, and I use the same exact brush to get rid of stray hairs. We're going to get rid of some of these sunspots down here real quick. Now, I'd spend a lot of time on a portrait to get rid of blemishes and things. But this video, I don't want it to run forever. So we're going to just do a really quick job. Now, don't worry if you get some smearing or get some discoloration when you do this, because the skin softening will help reduce that as well. Now I'm going to get a little smaller of a brush, and we're going to start getting rid of some of these stray hairs. And I'm simply going to paint on them. And sometimes you got to go over more than once. And if it smudges a little, just go over it a little more and try to get rid of it. If you hear my dog barking in the background, I apologize. So we're going to come in here. And like blemishes, I would spend a lot of time doing this and really clean it up. And really, you'd be amazed how well this works. Oops. The main thing I would encourage you, if you have any control over the situation, like you're in your studio, make sure that there's not as many stray hairs as possible. That will really save you a lot of time in post-processing. Even if you're a wedding photographer, it helps if you have an assistant to help bring down some stray hairs. Have them bring a spray bottle with a little water sometimes helps too. And you could get these things under control, and it will save you a lot of time in post-processing. Now I'm going to go, there's a lot of like stray hairs out here on the white background. I'm not going to get rid of them all. I'm just going to do it for the sake of this demonstration. There's one there that won't go away. There it goes. So we're going to go real quick. There's one right here. This is where it might smear now because I'm near the edge of her hair there. Now you can, of course, zoom in by hitting Command or Control plus, then hold the space bar down and drag around, and you can see a little here. See what it did here? Kind of duplicated her eyebrow, and I didn't want that. So what we're going to do, get rid of some of these stray ones up here. And then we're going to get the regular healing brush, which is right there. And I'm going to get a smaller one. And I'm going to take a sample by holding in the Alt or Option key. It's Alt if you have PC, Option if you have a Mac. And I'm going to sample right there. And I'm going to come in here and sample again, and sample again, and sample again. Whoops, far. Kind of discoloring it a little too much. Let's sample over there. So we got rid of some of those. Once we soften skin, that should help that a lot. Now we'll go back to the spot healing brush. Get a little bit of a smaller one. Get rid of some of this hair there. And some over here. Okay, I'm being a little bit too fussy for the sake of this video. We're going to zoom out. I'm going to hit Command 0. Again, it's Control 0. And we got rid of some blemishes on that layer there. And some stray hairs. But you get the idea what you need to do. Now the next thing I think we'll do is we're going to soften these bags under her eye. So I'm going to duplicate this layer and have a layer just for that. And I'm going to show you two different ways. One way I probably used exclusively for 10 years. But for the last several years, I've used this other way almost exclusively. But I have found that sometimes one of these methods works better than another on a specific image. So I'm going to show you both ways. You can use whichever one works best for you, and then you may find that it's image specific. Some images you may not get good results with one method. Try the other. It may work better. Now, the first method I think I'll show you is the newer method, and it involves the clone stamp tool. That's right here. You hit the S key on your keyboard and you have the clone stamp tool. Now you need some very specific settings up here in the tool properties. I already have it set actually. Mode is lighten, so make sure that it's in lighten mode and that your opacity is somewhere between like 25 and 30%. Now the way this method works is you first take a sample like we did with the healing brush tool, and you do that by holding that Alt or Option key in. And we're going to do her left eye first, and I'm going to take a sample right here by holding that Alt or Option key in, and I'm going to sample right there. Then what you want to do is you want to just come through. Now you're only using this tool at a 29% opacity in this case, so you may have to paint over the area repeatedly to get it to soften, and you may have to resample quite a bit. But don't worry about it, just do it. And you can see it's working. And don't worry if, it starts to look funny because we're going to use opacity to blend it so it looks a little more natural. All right, so come in here like that. Okay, so that is the newer method. Now I'm going to show you the older method, which may work in some situations, and that involves using the patch tool. So you get the patch tool. We want a normal patch. You have two choices, normal and content aware. Make sure you're using normal and you have source clicked. What you want to do is you want to just draw around the bag. Now try to avoid like her eyelashes like that. So we have a selection. Those are the marching ants. Now what we're going to do is just pull this down onto her cheek below it and let go. Now it looks like it gave her a bit of a black eye in this case. So the other way I think worked a little better. But we're still really not done. That doesn't look natural at all. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to this opacity of this layer. And you can see it's set at 100 by default. We're going to take that opacity down until it blends in better. So, she has some minor bags on her eyes. But it's not so bad that, it's better, let's say, than there it is without, and there it is with the adjustment. Now, in my opinion, the lighten method with the clone stamp tool worked a little better. So I'm going to try to even them out a little bit for this poor girl by using that method again here to try to even it out just a little bit. Kind of totally butchered the eyes here, but you get the idea. So they're kind of even. Maybe blend them a little better. So all right, so that gives you two different methods to soften bags under the eyes. So the next thing we're going to be doing is softening skin. Now, there's a lot of different ways to soften skin. The most popular way by professional retouchers is frequency separation. Usually, I don't use frequency separation because I think for what I do, it's overkill. Now, if you're that high fashion photographer and advertising photographer, frequency separation is probably something you should do. But be aware that frequency separation is a CPU hog. It uses a lot of CPU power, and you need a really powerful computer with a lot of RAM for it to be something that gets done relatively quickly. That's another reason why I don't teach it, is because a lot of people that I teach are just starting out in photography. They don't have the best computer, and frequency separation isn't practical for them to use. The way that I use most of the time, and the way that I think works great, and actually a lot of photographers use this, is what they call an inverted high pass. It works out really, really well. So what we're going to do is first we're going to take this copy here. This is where we fixed her eyes. And we're going to merge that down by hitting Command E. All right. Now what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate this layer by hitting Command J. Again, that's Control J if you have a PC. Now what I'm going to be showing you is really pretty much a formula for this method. So you might want to take some notes of what we're going to do. So what we're going to do first is, after we duplicated that layer, is we're going to go in here and we're going to change this blend mode to vivid light. And you can see when we do that, it looks bad. But this is called inverted high pass. So what we're going to do first, now we have this vivid light blend mode. We're going to invert this layer. And it's simple. Remember how we inverted the mask as we hit Command I or Control I? Do the same thing here. Hit Command I. So we make sure you're on the layer and hit Command I. There we go. And we inverted the layer. Now, after you invert the layer, we're going to add a filter to it. Now it's called an inverted high pass. So you could probably guess we're going to add a high pass filter to it. So we're going to go up to Filter, and then down to Other, and then down to High Pass. Now, I mentioned it's a formula. The radius should be 24 pixels. Just put in 24 and hit OK. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add some Gaussian blur. And one thing I should add, since the layer is inverted, if you're adding blur, you're actually sharpening. So you're doing the opposite. So we're going to add blur. So in effect to the image, we're sharpening it with this blur. So we're going to go to Blur, Gaussian Blur, and you want 3 pixels, and click OK. Now, all right, it still looks horrible. So what are we going to do? Well, we're going to go into the Layer Style dialog, and to do that, you need to click right on the postage stamp of this inverted layer, and you'll get this Layer Style dialog. And you can see by default, it's going to say Blend If Gray. You're going to leave that alone. And right below that, it says this layer, and you have 2 sliders, one at either end. And you could see that if I move them, you can see it's almost trying to come in there, but it doesn't look right. But if you look really closely at each of these 2 sliders, you'll see there's a line in the middle. You actually could split these sliders in half. And when you do that, they blend a lot better. And to split them in half, you're going to hold the Alt or Option key in when you click on it. Alt if you have a PC, Option if you have a Mac, and then click on the slider and you see how it's split in half. Now do that to the other side. Hold the Alt or Option key and click on that one, and you can see that one split in half. So what we're going to do is move this one towards that way, and we're going to move this one towards that way. And you can see how it blended in really very, very nicely. And you can experiment with it, move them at varying amounts, and see where it looks the best. Now, I'm going to say for the sake of this video again that that's good enough, so we're going to click OK. But, a couple things. It may be a little bit too much, number one. And number two, not only did we soften the skin, but we softened her eyes, her eyebrows, her eyelashes, her teeth, her lips, her hair. We really just want a softened skin. So what we're going to do first is we're going to take care of that problem, and we're going to add a layer mask. Now you could add a white layer mask and then paint away the adjustment where you don't want it. So white layer mask, paint in black with a brush on her hair, on her eyebrows, on her eyes, on her lips, on her teeth, on her nostrils, and on her clothes. Usually the easier way is to add a black layer mask and then paint in white where you want the effect to be applied. So if we go down here in the bottom of the right panel, we see we have a layer mask. If I just click on that, it'll be a white one. I want a black one, so I'm going to hold that Alt or Option key in when I click on it, and I'll get that black mask. Now you can see our skin softening is gone. But all we need to do now is get a brush. So we're going to hit the B key on the brush, and you're going to want a pretty soft brush. So I'm going to bring hardness all the way down to 0. And now we have this black mask, and we're going to want to paint in white on it. And again, this you could take your time and make sure that you don't hit anywhere you shouldn't hit, like her hair, her eyebrows, her eyelashes, and things. I'm just going to try to go as quick as possible while trying to be true to the video here of showing you how to soften skin. Get us a little bit of a smaller brush to come in here, and a little bit of a smaller brush to get up under her eyebrow. Oops, I smeared a little bit there, but okay. And again, if you make a mistake, remember, because we're painting on a mask, you could switch to black and very easily just come in and remove your mistake by painting in black on the mask. Down here real quick, their shoulder, whoops, over a little bit, but that's all right. All right. Now we could look at what we painted by holding the Alt key in, if you have a PC, Option if you have a Mac, and click right on the mask. And you can see we get a look at the mask and where we painted. It looks scary. But you come in, and if you missed any spots, come in here and clean those up. Spot right there. Okay, then hold that Alt or Option key in again and click on the mask again to go back to our regular image. Now, maybe it doesn't look like you did a lot, so we're going to turn it off. There's before, and there's after. Before, after. And if you think you might have missed anywhere, again, you could come back in here, and I think that looks pretty good. But for me, I think it's a little bit too much. I think the skin's a little bit too soft. Now, the nice thing about this method, you still have texture. You can see we could still see the pores on her skin. That's I think the goal of anyone who is softening skin. You want the skin soft, but you don't want it so soft that you're obliterating all the detail of the pores and the texture of the person's skin. And even at 100% opacity, it's not bad. But I think it's just a little bit too much. So you could come in here with this opacity slider, and you could just bring it down a little bit and make it look maybe a little more natural. There's before, after. There's before, after, before, after. So I'm going to say that's pretty good. I'm going to leave it at that. So I'm going to merge down again by hitting Command E. Again, that's Control E if you have a PC. There is our starting image. That's what we started with. And this is what we ended up with. We're done with our processing. Now, real quick, just let me add again, I went very quickly. I wasn't very studious on getting rid of all her blemishes. She also had some rather maybe large pores on her nose that I could have used the spot healing brush for to soften those a little bit or get rid of those. I wasn't real careful with her hair. She has more stray hairs here and there that we could eliminate. So I could have spent a lot more time on this and did a much better job. But I hope that what I did show you got you going and you could practice on an image and it will be good enough for the stuff you need to do. So that's it for this episode 9. I think, I'm not 100% sure, but I think that this video series might have ran its course. I had mentioned that it's going to be maybe 8 to 10 episodes getting you started in Photoshop. I don't think I'm going to have a specific series like intermediate Photoshop, but what I will do, I think I'll have a Photoshop techniques series where I'll show different techniques, different things, some more advanced techniques you could do in Photoshop, like those advanced techniques for you fashion and advertising photographers when you work on a portrait. Harder things like the harder sky swaps and things like that. So look for that in the coming weeks. But I'm pretty sure that this series has run its course. If anyone does have a suggestion, leave it in the comments below and I'll see what I could do. Thank you, everyone that watches my videos. I truly do appreciate it. I'll talk to you guys soon.